Hello, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion on supporting ELL students and families. Thank you for joining us today. All right, we kindly request your attention for a brief moment in the spirit of transparency and utmost respect for our community. We have some information we'd like you to read on this disclaimer screen, and by taking a few moments to read through this disclaimer, you empower yourself with important information regarding the boundaries of our knowledge sharing environment. Please take just a moment to read through this slide also, and then together we will embark on some exciting topics in early childhood education. So this panel of experts was created to provide real-world examples of two very important topics in ECE. We will explore ways to support English language learners and their families, even if we don't share their language, and we are also going to discuss community and online resources that could be valuable for our ELL students and their families. Okay, so Yulia, can we start with you? Will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Yulia Summers. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this panel. I've been teaching for the past 20 years. I've been teaching and working with young children, adults, in various educational settings in K-12 and daycare, preschool, ISD, university teacher education programs. But for the past 8 years, I've been teaching at the University of Arizona Global Campus. I taught a variety of courses, mostly ELL related courses and linguistics courses. I'm fluent in both English and Spanish. I'm a certified bilingual teacher in Dallas Independent School District. I live in Dallas, Texas.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Holly Lopez. I am the faculty and program chair for child development here at University of Arizona, as well as early childhood with differentiated instruction. Thanks so much for having me here.
Thank you both for being here. We want to ask first, how can educators support English language learners and their families if they don't speak the same language? Yulia, would you like to start?
Yes. So we've learned about comprehensible input, and we know that without comprehensible input, language development does not occur. So students need to have sufficient amount of comprehensible input in order to produce that output, the real output in the target language. And it is crucial that our teachers understand how to increase that comprehensible input so that our students can move and advance in their language proficiency. So I'll share right now an example of how comprehensible input looked like in my classroom. I'll share the screen. Okay, what you should be able to see right now is a graphic organizer. Is that what you're seeing right now? Something that looks like a graphic organizer. So this I'll just share a little bit about the background of this. I was a third grade bilingual teacher. All of my students in Dallas Independent School District were ELL, English language learners, or what I like to call them multilingual language learners. When they came into my third grade classroom, at the time we were preparing them for the state exam. In third grade, they have to pass in order to move to the next grade level. And a lot of my students, they didn't have that basic English proficiency that they needed to pass the exam. And so I had to quickly come up with something. And I knew that I had to increase that comprehensible input. And so one thing I knew that works well for English language learners is using graphic organizers. And so because I was a third grade math teacher, I found a way to, like a system for them to process 70% of that state exam, math exam, was problem solving. So it's a lot of reading in English. And they had to kind of find a way to process that information in a way that they could understand, solve the problem. And so I'll show you some of the examples of graphic organizers. So this one is See, Plan, Do, Reflect. So I have them like write the key points here, key points that after they read the word problem, like what are some key points from the word problem? Then like see, plan, what do you do? like, what's your plan? How you plan to solve the problem? And so he writes, divide 16 by 4. So he writes the full sentence. And then here he actually shows me a graphic, like a little diagram of how he plans to do this. And he writes the number sentence. And I had them do this. Remember, 70% of that exam was problem solving of the state exam. And you know, in order for ELLs, it's just a lot of unknown language, unfamiliar language. And so this really helps them to process information. And remember that becoming effective at providing comprehensible input, it takes time. And so for me, this was a way to provide comprehensible input for my students. Towards the end of the year, I remember when we got the state results, all of my students passed the state exam, and half of the students in that classroom got a commended score. A commended means they made maybe 1 to 3 mistakes on the whole test. And I was not even in the classroom with them, but I know that they were doing see, plan, do, reflect. They were doing the little diagrams. And so each word problem obviously requires a different diagram. So they knew which diagram to use. They knew that they have to solve the problem and show me their work. And so that is one way to increase that comprehensible input. Even dyslexic students were passing the exams. Principal invited me to do the training for all the other districts, for all the other like areas in our district. And the teachers were sharing with me that dyslexic students were passing the state exam, which they like, so they had so many students passing exam because of this diagram. So these are some of the diagrams, just like parts and total diagram. And so they're very helpful because students often, like, they don't know, like, they read the problem and they don't know, do I look for part, do I look for total? And so this really helps them, like change diagram, compare diagram. They're just simple ways to help students process information, division, multiplication diagram. But back to the question, how teachers can support ELLs, and that's one way I supported my students, is providing them with that comprehensible input, increasing that comprehensible input so that they can understand and process information.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I like, you know, you don't often think that they would struggle even with math problems because they are written in a language that they don't speak or read. So I loved that example. Holly?
Thanks for sharing that visual, especially when it comes to middle childhood learning. My experience is much more in early childhood, so infant, toddler, and preschool, but we also use visuals, especially during reading time, using posters, using pictures as a communication system, using sign language as needed. But the number one thing that really worked for us is really creating strong relationships with the families. I have colleagues who had classrooms where 6 or 7 languages, different languages, were in one classroom in San Francisco. And there's no way. I mean, you can be, maybe you're bilingual, even trilingual, right? But 7 languages is a lot. So what I found and what I've seen is that really creating relationships with families, getting to know them, getting to know their key phrases, to help the child feel comfortable, to help you feel comfortable. So I always had a list of key phrases written out on my teacher wall. And then also really creating healthy relationships with families in order to impact the child's affective filter. A lot of people don't worry about the affective filter, but something that happens is when children get nervous or they get intimidated or scared, something throws them, and this happens with adults too, is their affective filter closes in, and then less information comes through because it's sort of like a screen and it gets really closed, and no information can get through because they want to curl up behind a very strong wall, right? And so when you have a solid relationship with the child and their family, they they're okay to be themselves with you, whether or not they understand you. They're free to make mistakes. You're free to make mistakes with them. So for me, that foundation is that really understanding the needs of the family, their language, making sure everyone feels really safe. Those key phrases, and then also just inviting families in to really partake in the education system, or in the education setting. Most bilingual families I've worked with tend to feel like, well, I'm not a teacher. You're the teacher and I am the parent. You do what you do. And something that I feel like I've really worked hard towards is helping immigrant families, especially, into the classroom. No, this is a space for everyone, for parents and for children to learn together. So providing as many opportunities for parents to share cultural songs, cultural trends, traditions, or even processes in their home language in the classroom gets to be a learning activity for everybody. And again, helps everyone feel safe and comfortable for that language to flow.
Those are both tremendous ways to help ELL families and your students in your classroom. So thank you very much. So what helpful community and or online resources have you discovered that can help ELL language learners and their families? Yulia, you can go first.
Okay, let me share a few with you. So the first one that I wanted to go through, just kind of go through some of the tabs here, is the Coloring Colorado. I love this website because it has videos, as you can see here. I also love that it has that state resources. So you can kind of look for resources by state, which is important because different states have different guides for ELL. I also love that there are books. You can find there are books for young children, books for kids, for professionals. So you definitely should bookmark this one. There are many different videos you can watch, helpful videos. For example, if you want to know how to collaborate with another teacher, you'll find videos, actual videos on how to collaborate with that, how collaboration looks like in the classroom. Another website that I love using, or you should definitely know and bookmark, is WIDA. So WIDA is the consortium of 41 states, and your state possibly could be the WIDA consortium state. WIDA is just an organization that provides resources for teachers on assessment and instruction. They've developed standards for us. Well, in Texas, we're not part of WIDA, so I'm not super familiar with WIDA, but I've been kind of using it for my other students who are not from Texas. So you definitely need to get to know this organization and see what they offer for your district. And another website that I've used, and that's if you have a lot of, let's say you have a refugee population and you just don't know where to go, where to find resources. So I recommend using this website, Cultural Orientation Resource Center. Here's a lot of information about refugees, like statistics. For example, that's something I've used when I've published my recent book chapter. I had to look up like, how many refugees do we have in Houston, and where are they from? And so I had to use the statistics from this website and their backgrounds, even videos for learning about refugees, how to welcome them, provide like resources to them, and I like how there are different videos here, lots of activities. So those are just three that I recommend using. Again, they're like Coloring Colorado. I went through and discussed a little bit about WIDA and what WIDA does for your state, and the Cultural Orientation Resource Center. They're helpful resources.
Yeah, those are really great. And I love Colorín Colorado. That's a great site. And I think it's so important that families have access to the global resources. There's so many out there. But another piece I'd like to add is making sure that they have access to their local resources. So I would go to your online local library, to your online local community center, your online local social services, because they're going to have the most tailored resources for one particular community. And it's going to be easier to access physically if you need to physically access that. My number one app for working with anyone with a different language is any sort of audio app such as Google Translate, where parents can talk into the app and teachers can also talk into the app and communicate through the app. And something that that is really important to remember about that app is you may be working with parents who may not be, they're non-native speakers of English, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they read and write in their home language. And so what audio apps do is provide another way to communicate no matter what their reading level and their languages, right? So you can always create a relationship through those apps. And they're very common, but Google Translate is probably my go-to, although I don't know if we're allowed to support a particular one. Yeah. And also one other resource that I think a lot of people forget about, and it isn't online, but I think really making sure that families are connecting with other families, so that especially if for immigrant or migrant families, and having a chance to meet other families, other parents who may be in a similar situation, who may speak the same language, right? To have a connection and to create a connection where families then also can support other families and children can support other children, I think is something that's really huge and we can't forget about.
These ideas are outstanding. We thank you so much for being here today.